I remember being at the beginning of my music career, and I wonder if any of you have ever been here as well, where I would hear all these words thrown around, words like masters, publishing, PRO, recoupable advances, and the list goes on and on and on. I would hear all these words and maybe kind of generally know what those words meant, but wouldn't really have a deep understanding of what they actually meant and really how they applied to me. Can any of you guys relate? Have you been there before? Well, my name's Christian Hale, and in this video, we're gonna unpack and truly demystify the music business. You're gonna walk away at the end of this video with a good understanding of how the music business is structured, where you fit into it, and how all this stuff actually affects you and applies to you. If you're wondering who I am and why you should listen to me about any of this, I've been a producer-songwriter here in Nashville for close to a decade now, and I really live and breathe this stuff day in, day out. I've been a songwriter signed to publishing deals, produced stuff for major labels, done a ton of sync deals, been a part of music catalog sales, and even have some of my own side artist projects with hundreds of thousands of monthly listeners. So I've truly lived and experienced this music business day in and day out from quite a few different perspectives. So without any further ado, let's get into this video and demystify the music business. All right, so in having this conversation of truly understanding the music business, there's one foundational concept that I think you need to understand, and we're going to start here. This is the building blocks that all of this is truly built off of. In the business, there are two copyrights or buckets of copyrights that really everything is built off of. So what are those two buckets? And then we'll unpack them for you. Well, those buckets, if we draw us a nice little line here to divide this whole thing up, because again, this is the foundation that this whole business is built on and this whole video is built on. Over here on the left side, we have sound recordings. And over here on the right side, we have compositions. Some words that you might commonly hear associated with those two respective buckets. Over here on sound recordings, you might hear the word masters thrown around pretty commonly, kind of interchanged with sound recordings. We'll get into what all that means. And over here with compositions, you might commonly hear words like publishing thrown around. Also might commonly hear words like songwriting thrown around. So like I said, this right here is foundational. Sound recordings and masters are on one side, and publishing, composition, songwriting are on a different side. So let's first start by talking about who plays ball in those two buckets. Then I'll give you an understanding, an example of how those buckets work together. So over here on the composition side, people that play ball over here are songwriters. Get into songwriters a little bit more. We also have publishers that play ball on this side. Kind of tied with songwriters and publishers, we have PROs, such as Ascap, BMI, and Sesac. We'll get into all that, but those are some of the people kind of associated with that composition, publishing, songwriting bucket over on this side. Over on the sound recording side, the people commonly associated with that bucket are artists, both independent and signed to record labels. So that gets us to record labels. If an artist is signed to a record label, they play ball in that bucket. Producers also play ball on this side of thing. It's all going to make sense here in a minute exactly how some of that works, but producers deal over here on this left side. And also on a smaller scale, but very much so, also studio musicians play ball over here on the left side with master sound recording. So what really is the difference of a composition, publishing versus a master and sound recording, and how do those worlds kind of play together? Well, I'm going to give you a really good example. So let's say I 100% by myself write a song called Mary Had a Little Lamb. I forever own the composition side, the publishing and the songwriting, and we'll get into the nuance of it, but I forever am associated with and have the rights to that composition side over here for Mary Had a Little Lamb. It doesn't matter who goes and records Mary Had a Little Lamb. I forever have that right side. You with me? You tracking? Does that make sense? All right. So let's then go say I myself go record my own version of Mary Had a Little Lamb. Well, because I went and recorded that version of Mary Had a Little Lamb, that song that I hypothetically wrote 100% by myself, I now own the rights to the sound recording of Mary Had a Little Lamb. So does that kind of make sense how those are two different things that play together? We have the composition, and then we have the sound recording. Now, let's say that you are a superstar artist out there and you love my composition, my hit song, Mary Had a Little Lamb, so much that you also want to go record your own version of Mary Had a Little Lamb. Well, in that case, you would have your sound recording of Mary Had a Little Lamb, but I would still have the composition and publishing associated with that composition. And then I, with my version of Mary Had a Little Lamb, would have my sound recording of that. But still, in both of those sound recordings, I would still retain the composition and the publishing rights. So does that start to make sense how those are two different buckets? And like I said, understanding these two buckets, as you're going to see as we go down the examples here, everything is divided into those two little buckets. So we got our compositions over here, and we got our sound recordings over here. So moving right along here, let's dive in for a little bit on this right side, the composition and publishing side. All right, so on this right side alone, we're not talking about this side over here. We're not talking about master sound recordings. Just on this left side, there are two sides over on the right under compositions that both equal 100% when a song is born. And of those two sides, again, just over here, we have a songwriter share that equals a full 100%, and we have a publisher share that equals its full 100%. But again, these two 100% sides are just under this bucket over here. We're not talking about that sound recording bucket. Does that make sense? You with me? So if you're a songwriter that writes a song fully by yourself and you are not signed to a music publishing deal, you by default, when you go write that hit song called Mary Had a Little Lamb, by default, you get a full 100% of both sides. Okay? So you get 100% of this and you get 100% of that right there. Okay? Let's say you then go write another song with your buddy, you 50-50 co-write it, and neither one of you are signed to music publishers or have music publishing deals. By default, you get 50%, and you still get your 50% of your publishing side. Does that make sense? And your friend gets their 50%, and they get their 50% of their publishing side. So over here on this big right side under the composition umbrella, we have these two sides, songwriter, publishing. And I see people out there in the business get these things mixed up. They'll be like, hey, my master and my publishing, and they'll kind of then start talking about things like record labels and artists and studio musicians, and the musicians get publishing, or I'm a songwriter and I get master artist. We're demystifying all that. We have these two nice little buckets that under the two separate buckets, we're starting to build these things out. So when you hear things out there like songwriters and publishing, or a songwriter share, a publishing share, and does a publisher collect on the master? No. Line, this big thick line down the middle right here is putting a nice thick wall up, and the songwriters and publishers, those two sides all fall under this one umbrella over here on the right side. So in these couple examples we gave right here, we talked about you writing a song 100% by yourself where you own and control your own publishing, or you co-writing a song with your friend 50-50 where you each own and control your own publishing. So let's for a moment talk briefly about music publishing deals. So again, music publishing deals are dealing just over here on this right side of the equation. And music publishing deals we could sit down and talk about for an hour, so we're not going to go way in the weeds on it, but what is a music publishing deal? Okay, so because we have the two halves right here, you as a songwriter, whether you're independent or are signed to a music publishing deal, will always, no matter what, unless you sign some absolutely shady agreement that doesn't really exist, but that's an aside, but you will always, no matter what, in a standard publishing deal, you will always own, and we'll say control, but there's some nuance to it, but you'll always own and control this. Let's say, though, that a publisher approaches you. Publishers come in all various shapes and sizes. There's the major labels, major publishers out there associated with the major labels, I should say, like Warner, Sony, Capitol, Cobalt, things like that. There's major publishers, there's independent publishers, a whole bunch of those around here in Nashville that are small companies, teams of 3 or 4, but they're really connected and in the industry. Any company like that, it could just be one person. Your buddy, if they wanted to, could go start their own publishing company and say, hey, I'm going to be your publisher. And they might have never been a publisher before. When you enter into a publishing agreement, what that is saying is you, remember, you're always going to own and control this over here. But a publisher is going to come in exchange for, we'll get into what they exchange for you, and say, hey, we are now going to own and control part of or all of this. Owns and controls this. So, why in the world would anyone sign a publishing deal? Well, there's some pros and cons to this. And like I said, I've moved to Nashville, not in a publishing deal. I was signed to a music publisher for 3 years, chose not to renew that deal, and actually go back to being a professional songwriter fully on my own, independent. So, I've seen the good and bad of both of this. So, why somebody might sign to a music publisher is an advance, meaning I'm a music publisher, and these deals and amounts of money, advances can be structured a lot of different ways, but say, hey, I'm a music publisher. I think you're pretty good. I want to pay you $20,000 a year or $50,000 a year or $1 million a year if you're like, big time songwriter. I'm going to pay you $1 million a year to write songs. And in exchange for that $1 million, let's say I'm going to own and control 100% of your publishing over here. You get your writer share, but I'm going to own control that. What an advance means, and specifically a recoupable advance, this shows up on both sides of the equation, and this is very foundational to understand the music business. An advance basically means if I give you $1 million, the first million you make back, I get all of it. And then $1,000,001, we start splitting according to whatever our negotiated agreement is. So a publisher might say, hey, I'm going to give you an advance in exchange for some of your publishing. So, you think about the new to town songwriter who doesn't make a dollar for music, and somebody expresses interest in them and says, I'm actually going to pay you money to do this thing. Well, it's not like you're getting a salary. Like if you don't recoup that money, it's not like a loan where you're on the line and you have to go write the publisher a check back. I guess that is a pro to it. But $1 million, $100, $1,000, any amount of money that is an advance or a recoupable advance. When you hear those words or those words together, advance, recoupable advance, it's not a free lunch. It's not a salary that you get. It is an advance. We are advancing you money against your future earnings. And, if it's $30,000, that first $30,000 that comes in the door from the songs that you've generated in this publishing deal, we get that $30,001. We begin to split. Another reason why somebody might enter into a publishing agreement is for relationships. A lot of these publishers, if it's a publisher worth their salt, they are connected with people over here on this side of the equation. Artists, record labels, producers, studio musicians, the people that then go record those songs and put them out in the world. You kind of starting to see how those two sides of the equation play together here. But yeah, a publisher, the good publishers are very connected. They're in tune with opportunities and artists. They know other publishers who have great songwriters. So a publishing relationship, a publishing deal that goes well, there is that give and take. If you're giving up some ownership, some control of your publisher share over here in exchange for, hopefully some relationships or some money. Another reason why you might sign a publishing deal is for, it kind of goes with the relationship thing, but pitching your songs to, artists and labels over on that left-hand side, or pitching for TV and film licensing. And another reason why people might sign a publishing deal is for administration. A pretty standard publishing deal is going to include the administration of both of those sides. So even though you will always own and control this right here, your songwriter share, typically in a publishing deal, and we'll get into co-publishing agreements here in a minute, but typically in a publishing deal, your music publisher is going to go collect all of this right here. $100 come in, they're going to go collect it out. Then they'll go divvy it out to you accordingly, typically quarterly or twice a year, or the most standard time frames you see those things come in. So those are some of the reasons why people sign music publishing deals. But you kind of now see, like, we're dealing in this bucket over here on the right side. Music publishing, songwriting, it all flows right over here. With music publishing, you might have heard a term out there thrown around, such as a co-pub or a co-publishing agreement. So basically what a co-publishing agreement is kind of the examples we were talking about up here would be you assigning 100% of this publisher share right here to a music publisher. But like the type of publishing deal I entered into, and maybe if you have some more success, you can negotiate and get a publisher to agree to these kinds of things, is what's called a co-publishing agreement. And a co-publishing agreement is where, again, you own and control this, your songwriter share right here, but and the terms can all be negotiated. It can look a lot of different ways, but let's just, for the example here, say on a co-pub, you own and control this, you own this, because this is your writer share. Remember this right here. but we are going to co-publish. Me and the publisher are going to co-publish the songs together. So I get 50% of this side right here, and the publisher gets 50% of this right here. You tracking? Does that make sense? Now, again, the publisher typically has the administration rights to the whole thing. So they'll go collect all of this right here and then divvy me my share here and then divvy me my share right there and then keep this. But again, even if you have co-publishing, if you get an advance, like if it's a $30,000 advance, let's say, the first $30,000 made both off of this right here and this right here is all going to flow back to the publisher right here. So you're starting to understand what recoupable and advance means? Yeah. So that's what a music co-publishing agreement might look like. So let's run an example of like what this might look like in real life. Let's say I write a song. We got a song right here. We got our songwriter share that needs to equal 100%, right? And we got our publisher share that also needs to equal 100%. And let's say I co-write a song with one other person. And let's say I am not signed to a music publishing agreement. So me, I get 50%. And my self-administered publishing company also gets 50%. Let's say my friend has a co-publishing agreement with Sony Music Publishing, let's say. So my friend will keep their 50% right here. And then this will be split up right here where friend's co-pub will collect 25% and Sony will collect, 25%. Does that kind of start to make sense? Now, when you start getting into 3-way, 4-way rights or some of these LA pop songs where there's like 10 writers on songs, like you really start to see people are, they're fighting over pieces of pieces here. But let's say $200 comes in the door on this song we wrote. Cool. We went out, made $200. Sometimes that's easier said than done. It's not always as easy as it sounds to make $200 on a song. But say $200 comes in. Money's going to get split like this. $100 right off the top is going to go to this bucket. $100 right off the top is going to go to this bucket. And then from there, the percentages will just start getting divvied up accordingly, where over here on the left side, I'm going to make $50. My friend's going to make $50. Then over here on the publisher side, I'm going to make $50. My friend's co-publisher is going to make $25 and Sony is going to make $25. This kind of starts to make sense, right? Again, unless this friend has a recoupable advance from Sony, then Sony's going to make that all until they're paid back. So you kind of start to see how music publishing starts to flow and what some of that looks like. You might be wondering who actually collects the music publishing. And remember, if we scroll right back up to the top up here, we talked about this little word right here called PROs. PROs stand for this. This is Performance Rights Organizations. Let's write this down. Performance Rights Organizations. And again, you can get all these show notes that you're seeing done in real time right here over on my website, christianhale.co/free resources. Performance rights organizations are companies such as, you might have heard of these before, Ascap, okay, BMI, Sesac. If you're a friend up there watching in Canada, SoCan is one. And you, as a songwriter and a music publisher, you pick one. So you pick one to affiliate with. And what these companies do is they go out and collect revenue on behalf of music publishers and songwriters, both of those 100% shares, okay? And those companies go collect that money and pay it out to the music songwriters and publishers. So what money do those companies go collect? The PROs collect on public performances, okay? What's a public performance? That would be an example of like if you heard your song in Walmart. Our hit song up here, we keep talking about Mary Had a Little Lamb that we co-wrote, right? If you walk into Walmart and you hear that, these performance rights organizations enter into agreements with places like Walmart and Walgreens and airports and restaurants, and they actually send people out and track this stuff down to make sure, these entities are paying them their licenses, and they go divvy it all up to the songwriters and publishers that it's due to. So they pay for public performances. With that can include live performances. They pay on airplay for radio. And radio airplay is a very, very big one over here on this side of things. So like if you've heard a songwriter say, And we're kind of transitioning into some of this, but if you've heard a songwriter say like, man, like radio is really where the money's at, there is a lot of money over here on this side for radio airplay from these companies, ASCAP, BMI, Sesac, SOCAN, very favorable. They also go collect money, these PROs, for like TV play, meaning if you get a synchronization and you're a songwriter that writes a song that gets synced to TV film, and that song plays on, Grey's Anatomy for years and years and years to come, that can be a decent little stream of money that is collected on and paid out by these performance rights organizations right here, ASCAP, BMI, Sesac, and SOCAN. This isn't actually collected from ASCAP, BMI, Sesac, SOCAN, but CCLI, which is kind of specific to worship songwriting. It's basically the company that goes out and tracks what churches are performing songs. But CCLI can be very, very, very lucrative for music songwriters and publishers that write worship music for the church specifically. So I'm going to throw that in. That's another way that people over here on this pie make money, but that one isn't actually collected by ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, the PROs. But yeah, CCLI. So these are some of the ways that people, the songwriters and music publishers, again, that each have their 100% share. But again, under this bucket over here, we haven't even talked about sound recordings yet. We're getting there. We're going to make a little transition over into that where, yeah, it's kind of going to make sense. But these are the ways that the songwriters and publishers make money. It's public performances, airplay radio, TV play, CCLI money. If your song does get licensed for TV and film, there is an upfront licensing fee. So that's how people over here make money as well. But that one's not actually collected by the PROs either. That would be the music publishers and songwriters getting a license, issuing a license to, the company or the ad agency, whoever that actually wants to license your music. But again, we're talking over here on the right side. And this is where we kind of start to transition over here on the left side with masters and sound recording is a streaming conversation. So music songwriters and publishers do make money from streaming, but it's not near as much money as these people over here. So maybe you guys have heard some press out there, like it's as of the time I'm filming this, like there's some recent press. There's been songwriters and publishers mad at Spotify for a minute now. And as somebody that truly, as a music songwriter and publisher and co-publisher from my publishing deal, as well as an independent artist and a music producer and that whole kind of thing, I play ball in both sides of this here. And so like I really see this and live this. So you hear people really mad at Spotify out there. They're mad at the streaming platform saying we're not getting paid enough. Well, the people that aren't getting paid that much are the songwriters and music publishers over here. Per 1 million streams, per 1 million. Whoops, I'm not per $1 million. We're going to go per 1 million streams. Let's make that right. Per 1 million streams, and this can vary. This is typically about $400 over here. Okay. Now, back in the day when you were selling a physical product, like these songwriters and publishers were making a lot more money because there was a physical product that was getting sold. It's about $400. Again, before we then start dividing up the pie all the different ways with publishers and co-publishers and multiple songwriters and that whole kind of thing. But per 1 million streams, these people make about $400 on average. It can depend. Over here, though, per 1 million streams over here, these people make about $4,000, like genuinely about 10 times more. So the people that you hear mad at Spotify and Apple Music, and I don't think their anger is bad or out of line or anything like that, the people that you're like, we're not making very much from Spotify, are all the people that play ball over on this bucket over here. But the people playing ball over here, actually, if they're being perfectly honest, are pretty dang happy with streaming. In a lot of ways, the artists, independent or record labels, they would say that like streaming is kind of where it's at. So like if you hear some people out there say streaming's amazing, streaming is where the money's at, they are probably most likely the people playing ball over here with masters and sound recordings. And the people that are mad at streaming, saying streaming, Spotify, it pays like crap, all that stuff, are more than likely the people over here playing ball, the over here on the composition side, the publishers and songwriters. So again, as somebody that plays ball on both sides, like I really see this and live this. So like a little bit of piece of free music advice, I always say that I would be a bad advocate, like for better or worse. Like I'm not the type of person that like is personally going to go yell at the government and say, hey, like go make sure I'm paid more over here. I think it'd be amazing if I got paid more over there. I have a vested interest to get paid more over here with songwriting and music publishing. But I kind of look at this and say, all right, if this over here makes 10x the money as this over here, why would I not figure out how to play ball here? Y'all tracking? You with me? Does that make sense? Like, I'm just looking at it strictly from a business standpoint and say, okay, like how can I be more associated with sound recording? So let's talk about sound recordings here for a minute, who's associated with it and kind of where the money flows, how that looks like. So we already talked about that per 1 million streams, these people are making $4,000. It can be $5,000 from some of the DSPs, Spotify, Apple Music, those kinds of things. So you're making a lot more over here than over here. All right. So because of that, I would say it is the most advantageous time in the history of the world to be an independent artist. An independent artist, meaning you are an artist not signed to a record label. So I'm going to write that down. Good time to be indie. All right. Why might I say that it's a good time to be indie, and what are the pros and cons of if you should sign to a record label? Well, again, let's keep in mind we're now just over here talking about sound recordings over here on this left side only. So when an artist signs to a record label, typically, and these deals have changed a little bit, but typically, an artist is saying, we are going to assign, so when sign to label, a label owns 100% of the master. Like, labels are going to own this whole bucket right here, and if we're talking about streaming, like paying what it can pay over on this side, like no wonder labels want to own that. They might own that. And so then typically what they'll do though, is they will give like a historical traditional record deal. They're going to give the artist 16 points. And anytime you hear the word points thrown out, that's just a percent. So 16 of this 100%, we're so gracious. We're going to give you your 16 points. But you're going to go have to split that 16 points. Your 16 points, you're going to have to split that with a producer. So the label is not taking cuts of points for producers from their remaining, let's say, 84%. No. Typically, and all this can be negotiated, but typically in a standard record deal, the artist is having to go pay out points, which are percentages from that master to a producer. So if a producer is 4 points on a 16-point agreement that the artist and the label have together, 25%, if my math is correct, of those artists' point share is going to a producer. So why in the heck would anyone sign a record deal? Well, I think some of this is a little bit of an old model, and there are still reasons why people sign record deals. But typically, historically, why people have signed record deals are distribution. We'll talk about what that used to mean and what that means today. And promotion. And it's kind of an undertow to promotion. We will talk and we'll say radio promotion. And we will also say a bank, but anytime there's a bank and money involved, what is it, friends? Say it aloud. An advance, a recoupable advance. So this is one of the things that these two sides have in common is there are advances, recoupable advances involved. There's no such thing as a free lunch in the music business. If there's money paid out, it's probably an advance. So again, historically, traditionally, why artists would sign record deals would be distribution, promotion, and money. Okay, so let's look at the music business of, the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. What did distribution mean there? Well, distribution, because money, these compositions over here, the way they got out was putting them on a physical product, a CD, a cassette, vinyl, whatever. That physical product had to go be distributed, like mass produced a physical product and then distributed worldwide. So if you were an artist in the 90s and you wanted to walk into Walmart or Best Buy or Circuit City, shout out to Circuit City, my 90s friends, am I right? And have your record, alongside the artist that you love, you kind of had to have a pretty big player in the game, a major label who had these purchase orders and agreements in place with, these big Walmarts and Targets and whoever to actually get your music there. And because you're having to go out and make a physical product, like there's a lot of money involved to actually go, take the risk to go manufacture all that product and ship that product and then hope that it actually sells on the back end. So you kind of see back in the day, all right, that's what distribution really used to mean. But I'm going to ask you this question. When is the last time that you walked into Walmart or Target and bought a CD there? For me, it's been, I don't know, about 20 years, give or take. So, what distribution typically means now is I'm going to go upload a song and get it out to Spotify, Apple Music, Pandora, the DSPs, the digital service providers, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, so on and so forth, YouTube, and just go put my music out there. So let me ask you this question. Can you, as a fully independent artist, go get your music out to the same places that the record labels do? Can you go put your music on Apple Music and Spotify? That's where the labels are putting your music. Like, you have to ask yourself that. So distribution used to be a really big and important piece of being an artist because for all the reasons we just laid out, it was expensive and you wanted to get in these big box retail stores. But as everything's gone digital, it's kind of been a great equalizer. So that's one of the reasons why I say it's a really good time to be an independent artist. Let's now go look at promotion. So kind of in that same era of selling and promoting a physical product, CD, vinyl, radio promotion was the key to really mass promoting, getting your music out there on a broad scale. Radio promotion, especially in Nashville, is still in the country and Christian music worlds, especially, is still a really pivotal and important part of the industry. But let me ask you this, like for most of my viewers out there, and I ask people this all the time, when is the last time you drove in the car and turned on the radio? There might be some of you out there, but younger people, especially, and people my age, I'm 30, so kind of old, kind of young, not too old, not too young. It's kind of somewhere in the middle. I listen to Spotify, Apple Music, like and music on YouTube, honestly, all the time. I haven't turned on the radio to listen to the radio in a really, really long time. And again, kind of going back over here to the publishing side, the fact that streaming, these people make so much less than these people over here on the sound recording side. It's part of why music publishers, I think, are kind of scared about the future, and part of why I do think they should rightfully go advocate to go get paid more, because we are living in a streaming world. So radio, it can be a piece of the equation, but to go promote your song to radio, man, radio promotion is a game, and it is an expensive game. It's this whole game of like spending a whole bunch of money and having someone at your label who's friends with all these radio promoters and paying like tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars. Like, getting on the radio ain't free. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of work. It's total like back behind the curtain music business Sharky kind of game. It's no joke. But radio promotion and physical distribution used to be the main reasons why an artist would sign to a record label. So if you don't need physical distribution anymore and you just want to go put your music out on streaming, you don't need radio promotion. Why in the world are artists still signing to record labels? Well, and I have a lot of friends that work at record labels. It's an interesting time out there, and a lot of artists actually aren't signing to record labels because, no disrespect to my friends at record labels, there are some brilliant people, A&Rs, artists and repertoire, and A&R, you might have heard that word thrown out there before. But that's artists and repertoire. They're the people that typically go find the artists, help them record their music, kind of make decisions on hiring producers, musicians, mixers, that whole thing. There are still some good A&Rs out there, but there are a lot of A&Rs out there who say, hey, we're going to go sign you. We're going to go own and control. Remember, we're going to go own and control all this over here. And we're so graciously going to give you your 16 points, and 4 of those points, let's say, you're going to have to go split with the producer, and we're going to keep our 84. And, remember, all the money that we advance you, we're going to get that back first before those splits like really kind of come into play. It's just an aside though. A lot of them are saying, well, hey, we own and control all that, but just go get out there on TikTok and make your song go blow up, or, get on YouTube and start promoting. Like, at the end of the day, even if you are an artist that signs a record deal, like, you're going to have to go out there and grind and fight and go do the same things as independent artists. So some of that is why I start to say it's the best time in history to be an independent artist. Streaming, I think, has been a great equalizer. And I think streaming is a great thing. And record labels, when CD sales started going away and Napster started showing up, would say streaming saved the whole record industry. So again, you hear some people mad at streaming, some people love streaming. People over here, we like streaming. Streaming is good. So really, why do people still sign to record labels? It's this right here. It's a bank in a lot of cases. It still, like, if you're an artist that can't self-produce and you want to go work with hotshot bigwig producers, like, producers are probably going to charge anywhere from, any producer I would recommend is going to be like the dirt cheap, like $3,000 to $4,000 a song. most kind of, I would say, blue collar like people that like, kind of like me and my level of like, we're not Ryan Tedder or Max Martin, like $5,000 to maybe $10,000 a song is kind of what you could kind of expect to pay over here. And some of these, if an artist wants to go do a record and they want to go do it with a Ryan Tedder for, let's say, $50,000 a song, there's that bank right there. Like they're, a label is going to pay for that, but they're going to pay for that in exchange to own and control that whole thing, typically in perpetuity. You are seeing some labels, like I feel like start to come around and have to make it more enticing for artists to sign to them. So you are seeing more 50-50 record deals out there. And you are starting to see more distribution deals where, again, so we talked about distribution, what it used to be and what it is now. So there's a lot of distribution deals where some of these big entities, your Warners, your Sonys, the big companies out there, they still do have some pull and influence with the DSP, Spotify, Apple Music, etc. So, there might be something like we're going to sign a distribution deal. And actually, one of my artist projects, Outskirts, has a distribution deal. These can look a lot of ways. But typically in a distribution deal, the artist owns everything. A distributor, who's a little more premium, gets a percentage. Those percentages can be 15 to, I would say, 30% are the most common. Like all things in music, there can be advances involved, and there can be big advances involved. But what is an advance? An advance is recoupable. It's the word, right? No such thing as a free lunch. So these distributors will say, hey, you can own, let's say it's an 85-15 split. Hey, artist, we're going to give you $100,000. It might not just be like, here's $100,000 check, but it might be $100,000 check. But we're going to spend, it's typically like $100,000 in promotion on X amount of songs over X amount of time. And you're still going to own and control that. But remember that first $100,000, we're going to make all that back. And then $100,001, we'll start doing our 85-15 split, and you still technically own it, but we have the rights to distribute it, again, hopefully in exchange for some good connections with Spotify, Apple Music, the playlist. So distribution deals are starting to become a lot more appealing, and I think you're going to see more and more record labels moving to the 50-50, with more of a co-ownership type of model and a distribution deal model, because artists are saying no to record labels. Like back in the day, it was like you would never say no to the almighty record deal. You would never say no to the almighty record label, because they were going to be your ticket for distribution, get your product in the stores, and they were going to be your ticket to promotion, get your song on the radio. And you as a little artist, local band, like that was just frankly never going to happen. But the internet's changed everything, right? And it's kind of made it all the great equalizer. So that's a little bit of an overview at how the music business is structured. With any one of these things, like with artists being independent versus signed to a record label, we could deep dive and go really deep on that one subject. But again, that is under the sound recording bucket. We could talk about producers and producer deals and how that's all structured. But again, foundationally, I want you to remember these two copyrights right here, these two buckets: sound recordings, compositions. Publishing and songwriting is all associated with compositions. Masters are all associated with sound recordings. Two separate things. In review, the people that play ball over here with compositions are music publishers, songwriters, PROs. Music publishing deals are all over here on the right side. Your performance rights organizations, all over here on the right side: Ascap, BMI, Sesac, and SOCAN. They go collect the money, pay it out to songwriters and publishers, and people over here make a lot less money on streaming than the people over here, but they do make their money on public performances, airplay, TV play, CCLI, TV and film. There's probably some other ways. If there's any music songwriters and publishers watching, drop in the comments down below if you think I missed something there. And then the sound recording are the artists who then go record the songs, and the record labels and the producers and the mixers who furnish those recordings of these compositions. If you're a songwriter and a producer, or an artist that writes the songs, you are playing in both sides of those buckets, but they're two different buckets. Again, the people over here like streaming a little bit more. I would encourage you to find ways to play ball over here. Kind of gave you some ways that can be done, but find ways to go play ball over here, because there's a lot more money on streaming over here than over here. And for the reasons we discussed, there's some pros and cons to signing a record deal, but I think it's a great time to go be an independent artist. So Hope this video was helpful. Hope that you gained something from it. Maybe you understood all this and this just solidified what you thought you already knew, or maybe you learned something new. If this video was helpful, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, drop me a comment down below what you thought the most helpful part of this video was, and if there's any subject I covered that you would like me to deep dive on. As you can see here, we could go deep on any one of these subjects. So let me know what you want to see more of, and I'll definitely make that happen for you. I'm here to serve you, help bring value to your life, help you elevate the quality of your music, and as you can see here, your knowledge of the music business. So thanks so much for watching. Here's to understanding the music business better. We'll see you again here real soon.